Hello. I've been receiving several questions over the course of this past week regarding the heat day that we had on Wednesday at Claggett, Canevin, and Fenn. We're actually looking at some uncharted territories, I think, as many schools across Ohio are that have called heat days during this past week. I know it makes me feel old, but to say in my day, we didn't have heat days and we suffered through it. I think we're living through very different times right now where students and families are more accustomed to having conditioning in their home, which I think adds a little bit of stress on the learning environment when they come to school and there is no air conditioning. One thing I do want to stress is that I make every effort to keep students in school whenever possible. And one of the things that I really have to take into consideration when calling something like a heat day is where does the line between uncomfortable become unsafe? And the reason why is because if students aren't in school, they're not receiving any academics at all. One concern that I've received regarding students being in school when it's hot and uncomfortable is it's not an optimal learning environment. How much are they going to learn throughout the day? And my answer to that is no, it's not the optimal learning environment. And I recognize that it's hot and humid inside some of our buildings. However, having them in school learning something is better than them learning nothing at all. The other thing that I really like to stress to parents is that you should always take into consideration your own child's needs. When I make a calamity day call, it's based off of all 6,800 students across our district. I don't necessarily take into account individuals' needs, whether it's a medical condition, an allergy or something else where something like the high temperatures could cause that child an issue. So parents, please, you make the first call. If you feel it's unsafe for your child to be at school, call them off and we will count them as excused. Otherwise, like I said, what I'm looking at is that fine line between uncomfortable and dangerous. We may well have had our very first heat day ever this past Wednesday, so there is no precedent set here. What I've been doing over the course of the week with the hot days is working with surrounding superintendents, closely monitoring the weather, using the National Weather Service as well as local stations to see what the humidity is going to be like, what the temperatures are going to be like. I spent some time this past week in the buildings, actually measuring the temperatures with a laser thermometer. We also have a humidity wand that can detect the humidity in the building. What we have been utilizing this past week, when I say we, I mean me and other superintendents, is the National Weather Service Heat Index. And I'm just going to show that up here really quick. You can access this heat index just by doing a Google search. You'll see that many organizations have them. The one that I just showed you is through the National Weather Service. And what the heat index looks at is it compares the temperature within a room or outside with the level of humidity. And then it comes up with a feel-like temperature. With the higher humidity and the higher heat, the higher the feels like temperature. If you travel to Florida versus Arizona, that's a prime example, or Nevada. You head to Nevada or Arizona and it'll be 95 degrees and it doesn't feel bad because there's no humidity. You go to Florida or here in Ohio, just like on Wednesday, it's 92 and it's miserable. It feels more like it's 100, and that all has to do with the heat index. As you can see on the heat index, it is broken down into zones. There's actually 4 zones. 2 of them are yellow. One is a bright yellow and then a darker yellow, and these are both caution zones. There's also a dark orange zone, which is the danger zone, and then a red zone, which is extreme danger. If you take a look at the chart, these zones are broken down by safety when doing prolonged exposure or strenuous activity. So that's one of the things that we've been monitoring when we've had the hot days. On Tuesday, when temperatures were up, we were in the extreme caution zone. So that's still part of the yellow zone. So what we tried to do is be very aware of our students' exposure throughout the day, give them opportunities to take breaks in air-conditioned areas. Fenn went up to the high school for part of the day for some of their classes. All three of our unair-conditioned buildings have air-conditioned parts to them. So we made sure that classes had an opportunity to rotate in there. We also tried to be aware of the physical activity that our students were doing throughout the day. And I know we had a few glitches in this at some of our buildings. It's something we are being more aware of now, but scaling back on PE or recess time, having indoor recesses, things like that, to make sure that our students don't have too much exposure or too much strenuous activity in the weather. So just like calling a snow day, calling a heat day is really a prediction. We're watching the weather. I find that the stations are pretty accurate when it comes to the temperature. Where we're making more of a shot in the dark is what is that humidity going to look like? Because we could have a 90-degree day with low humidity where it's not too uncomfortable within the buildings to proceed. We could have the same day with a high humidity and we end up calling a heat day just like we did on Wednesday. So what we've been dealing with at the beginning of this week were not just high temperatures, but high humidity as well. The reason why school was not called on Tuesday is because we were still in that caution zone. So we tried to make adjustments to carry on academics within our buildings and provide students with a safe environment. Heading into Wednesday with the increased forecasted temperatures, Wednesday we were about in the mid-80s, maybe 87 as a high. On Tuesday going into Wednesday, the temperatures were up into the low 90s, 90, 92, with still a very high humidity. And we were actually still in that extreme caution zone, but we were just on the cusp of it, almost entering into the danger zone. So what I did is check the temperatures in some of the classrooms, and we do have classrooms whose temperatures tend to go up higher than the outdoor temperature. And yes, we have fans, extra fans, and air blowing in the buildings, but the problem is with the brick buildings, they just absorb the heat. It builds up in some of the classrooms, and then you get all those bodies in there and it's just contained. So Wednesday evening, as I had mentioned, I worked with other area superintendents and we had discussions regarding the heat index and when it was appropriate to close or not close, and we made the decision to close on Wednesday. And to me, it was the right decision. I think our staff and our students did an outstanding job on Tuesday, forging forward with academics under the situation while still ensuring there was a safe school environment. And that Wednesday, I was worried the buildings were going to be even worse after sitting in that heat the day before with all those bodies in it, and it getting even hotter the next day. Therefore, I made the decision to call the heat day. Whenever I call a calamity day, I will send that information out to you through our reverse call system. I also will typically send out an email and a text message informing you as well. In addition to that, we try and get that information up on our webpage as well as out via social media. The other area that we try and make sure we put that information out on, and I think most of you probably find out through our communication, but also through the traditional TV stations. There used to be the days where that's the only way you did find out. We still contact the television stations and provide them with the information so that they can post it, just in case parents don't receive our communication. The challenge with that is that we can't control what, when, or how those television stations post the information that we provide them. I do know I had watched Channel 3 WKYC the morning of Wednesday when we canceled, and I saw the closings on there, but I did receive some feedback that maybe some of the other stations did not post those. But I want you to know that we do make sure that those go out to all the stations. Well, I want to thank you for taking 10 minutes to learn a little bit about heat days. I can tell you it is not one of my favorite parts of the job. You know, I'm here for kids and academics, but sometimes I got to step into the weatherman role to make sure we are making the right decisions to keep our students safe at school. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, or you can send them to me through direct message through social media. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. And I'll be back with you tomorrow with my weekly video update. Thank you and have a good day.